This is a Headgum podcast.
Hello, this is Fake the Nation, where we talk about news, we talk about culture, and where we take the summer to scrape off the barnacles that have been building on our dark insides so we can set sail again to optimism. I am your host, Negin Farsad, and we're in the election season. So we'll talk about one-party rule and what it has done to certain states. We'll also talk about a very sensitive topic in culture, which is headphone etiquette and how much of your phone conversations should the rest of us be hearing. And as summer is in full jog, we ask why Americans are so shit at taking vacation. Today, you guys, the panel we have assembled for you today is it's like a walk. This is what the panel is like. It's like you're in Paris and you're walking by a patisserie shop and you're seeing all of these beautiful pastries and you're like, oh my god, those all look so delicious. That's this panel.
Can I be pain au chocolat?
You are pain au chocolat.
Okay, thanks.
And then Lilah, I'll let you choose your own.
Yeah, I'll do the little ham sandwich. Go ahead.
Well, the voices that you were hearing, joining us for the very first time is the journalist and podcast host. He has his latest show, which is a marvel. It is called White Devil. You should be immediately subscribing and listening to it. He's with Campsite Media. He is the wonderful Josh Dean. Hey, Josh.
Hello. Happy to be here.
I'm also joined by none other than the host of the Financial Times Culture podcast, Life and Art. You've heard her on the show before. She has delighted many of you, all of you. She is the extraordinary Lilah Raptopoulos. Hey, Lilah.
Hi, Negin. So nice to be here again.
Now, before we get into the show, I just want to remind listeners that they can go to patreon.com/Negin Farsad to support the show for as little as $4 a month. You get extra episodes of the show. It's a good time. It's where we really let down our hair, and we talk about weird and or critical things. So don't forget to go to patreon.com/Negin Farsad to learn about other ways you can support the show. And thank you so much to everybody who already does that. And thank you to everyone who just listens to the show. What a mitzvah. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope that you do. Okay, let us move into topic number 1. Okay, I have so many feelings about Americans and headphones, and I really needed to just riff it out. My first feeling is, I feel like at least 50% of people that I see walking around town, and I live in New York City, are wearing earbuds or those huge headphones that look heavy and uncomfortable. And
Yes.
from this totally non-scientific data, I'd say that number, the 1 and 2, has tripled in the last 10 years. Again, totally made up statistics.
So is that 3 and 4?
That's 14 and 22. Yeah.
14 and 22. Yeah. So I guess my question to the both of you is, like, have you noticed any differences in headphone use? What have you noticed? Tell me, Lilah.
I have noticed that people are using less. They're not using their headphones in public. Like, there's a lot more like game sounds and TikTok sounds on the train. I'm also in New York. And I've been thinking about why, and I think that I came up with a theory, and I'm curious what you both think. My theory is that every social platform has just gotten a lot noisier. Like,
So
there was
noisy.
a long time where we were just reading our emails or reading tweets or
Yeah.
scrolling Instagram, and then we knew, like, okay, it's YouTube time, it's Netflix time, we're going to plug in our headphones. But now, like, sound and not sound is like we're just flipping between it all the time. Like,
Yeah.
Instagram is 90% videos, dating apps have audio notes in them. I don't know. People are
Wait,
sending each
dating
other
apps
audio
have,
notes
hold on,
instead
dating apps have audio notes in them?
Last I was on a dating app about a year and something ago, they had audio notes. Yeah.
Oh.
People are also sending audio notes instead of sending text messages.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Very
Yeah.
guilty of that.
Yeah.
So there's two conflicting things going on, I think, at the same time, weirdly, which is that I feel like a lot of people are wearing headphones,
Yes.
and then a lot of people are defying the purpose of a headphone and just like letting audio play. So there's like literally, which I think actually the 1 and 2, this is what it is. Half of people are wearing headphones and are being audio, they're like, don't want anyone to hear. The other half of people are using audio just openly.
Yeah.
And then no one is not
So
using audio.
100% of people are using audio.
Yeah,
As the co-owner
good
of a
thing for us.
podcast company, I'm really happy to hear that.
Yes.
I hope that statistic is right. I didn't know we'd be doing math here, but
Yeah.
I'm
You've done
also a resident of New York, also a subway rider, but I always have AirPods in with noise canceling on. So I can't speak to the part of how many of the people on the subway are listening without headphones because my headphones are blocking out their noise. I would say that it feels to me like a lot of people have headphones in, whether or not they're using them or not. And I, as
Yes.
someone who dislikes small talk and actively hides from people he knows on the subway when he sees them from afar, I also use my AirPods as a defense mechanism, which is like, oh yeah, don't talk to him. I'm listening to something very important right now.
Yeah.
So,
It's a conference call. Yes.
Yeah, so like I feel like maybe some people wear headphones
they
aren't actually
froze. Oh,
using
no.
them.
Now, here's my question to you, Josh. How many hordes of people are always trying to talk to you in the streets?
Well, not very many, but I like to be prepared for when it does happen.
This is the thing that makes me crazy. I'm like, all of you think so highly of yourselves. Just rushing up to talk to you. And I am someone who never listen. I'm not never. You maybe once or twice a year, if it's like a snowy day and I'm just feeling gross and sad, I might like listen to a podcast while I'm walking. It's literally maybe twice a year. Otherwise, I do not do that because I love eavesdropping.
Interesting.
And I am available for strangers to come talk to me. You can come talk to me.
I also do love
totally fine with it. Love it, in fact. And as someone who invites it, I actually can say, again, this is scientific data from my life, that very few people actually take the bait. Like my ears are open and like just like slut ears out here, and nobody takes the bait, right? So I feel like everyone is safe. You can take them off. You know what I mean?
Well, but it's like maybe it's PTSD from flying on airplanes because that's really I feel like the formative trauma that led to me needing to walk around with headphones. Well, I mean, I do also need to listen to podcasts. So I legitimately am listening to things sometimes. But I also, like when I sit down on airplanes and people talk to me, that's a space when I want to be quiet, when I want to either do work or stare at a screen. And sometimes you sit next to the chatty, it's like someone's grandmother from,
an older
and
lady.
of course you don't want to be rude and you have to talk. And then 3 hours have passed and you haven't done any work. And you're just annoyed. Or maybe that's just me.
Lilah, so it's funny because there was like two competing pieces. There was a couple of competing pieces that came out about this. A few weeks ago, I read a piece, I think it was in the Post, I can't remember, that was like, people should stop using their headphones because it causes hearing, because we're creating a generation of hearing loss. And actually, the part of the reason I aggressively do not listen to stuff while I'm out and about, and the only time I do is on airplanes because it is boring on airplanes. The part of the reason is because when I was just moved to New York City, I had this friend and she would commute in from Long Island. She was living with her parents. And she would always listen to music, right? And then one day she was like, oh, you guys, I had to go to an audiologist or whatever and get tested because I lost the lower register of my hearing.
Oh, God.
She's like 22. It's fine. She's completely living a wonderful life. Like, it's not a big deal. It was like a small amount of hearing, right? But she said, and it terrified me. I was like, oh, God, no, thank you. You know what I mean? And so I've been very like vigilant about that. But the funny thing is, I remember, this piece came out in the Post about like how so many people are losing hearing at a younger and younger ages. And it's because we're overusing these things in our ears, and we need to give our ears a break. So there's like that thing that I'm just saying, as the grandmother sitting next to you in an airplane, please be careful of your hearing, your earballs, as you will.
The other thing I find also unofficially, sort of like unscientifically from my life, or scientifically from my life, is that sometimes if I have my AirPods in and I'm like in the house and I'm cooking or cleaning or something, and then I go to work and I still have my AirPods in and I take them, I just feel like this is wrong. I feel actually kind of claustrophobic, like I've just put myself in this little world and I didn't see anything and I didn't really experience anything, and I was on the subway and there were all these weird people having all these weird conversations, and like I didn't even make eye contact with them because I didn't even notice that they had a Dalmatian eating a bobby pin or whatever that happened.
We lost.
So I would say take them.
Oh, sorry, we lost you.
Oh, you lost me.
Take them out once in a while. I agree. It's okay. I think we got
Yeah.
the main point. Um, so last thing on this, which is that a behavioral scientist from Carnegie Mellon now on the phenomenon of people just letting audio play out loud. This behavioral scientist said, quote, when we have we're doing this because we're self-focused. And then he said, quote, when we have a narrow focus on the content we're consuming or the interaction we're having, we're not thinking very much about how other people might be affected by that and how negatively other people might be affected. And they might not like the noise that they could even hear it. And I found that interesting, which is that like they're not even like trying to be rude. They don't even know that they're being rude or that there's like etiquette around this or that other people can hear it, or they're just not thinking that next step about the people around them. And that maybe we're sort of like losing our ability to think about the 3 inches outside of us. You know?
Yeah.
We're all so narcissistic and egotistical that we just forget that the rest of the world can hear the things that are happening in front of us.
Yes.
I mean, it's dark, but possible. I mean, I have like my kids. I have 2 relatively young boys, and I'm often telling them to put headphones on because they will listen to their iPads or phones in the living room while we have a television on with something else on it or the radio on or something. And I feel like they don't realize it. And it's often YouTube, which is like some Australian man yelling about a video game or something. It's like, I'm like, what is this is so unpleasant to listen to, but could you please put your headphones on? But I think I mean, I don't think my kids are egotistical and narcissistic, but they definitely are not thinking about how we feel.
Yeah.
There's no question they are not considering the other people in the room and saying like, should this be out loud?
Right. I think children are generally egotistical and narcissistic. Like just as a blanket, again, scientific statement from my own life. Children are generally not terribly concerned about their parents.
The other option is that maybe we all just like think that we are stars in our own reality shows, and we think that other people think that what we're doing is charming. Like sometimes I find myself FaceTiming with my mother and thinking, this is good stuff. You know? She's just delighting everyone who's listening in the supermarket to our conversation.
The other thing is, I'm dating myself here, but when I can't remember if I was a teenager or in college. Yeah, teenager. There were people that carried radios, or like we called them boom boxes back in the day. And I'm seeing there's been a comeback of this. Like people in New York City again are carrying loud audio playing devices on their shoulder, on their bike, on their scooter or whatever.
Rahim.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a throwback, and it's surprising because I think they did it at that time because there was no Bluetooth, but there weren't even very good headphones, and it was like a fad. And now I'm not sure what it's about.
Yeah, the other interesting thing, Lilah, you mentioned reality TV, and one of these pieces they mentioned one of the reasons the trend of the speakerphone might be catching on is because on reality TV shows, characters fucking answer the phone on speakerphone so that the camera can get the audio, right? Which is not, they're only doing it because they're on screen. They're not like doing it because you're supposed to do, right? And like, but like we are all watching people do that, and it sort of becomes this like, oh, well, that's like accepted behavior now. You know what I mean?
Everything is content.
Everything is content. I know.
Ew. But ew.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good point. It's become a trend.
Okay, folks, let me know. Are you just openly listening to stuff on your speakerphone?
Sorry,
I
keep coming in and out.
Where are you on this? Are you?
Sorry, am I coming in and out for you guys? Are you losing me? You are.
Okay. You might. Did you turn off all the other websites on your laptop?
I'll do that. Okay.
Because I had an issue like that earlier, and I turned everything else off, and it kind of
just
cleared up my issue.
close everything.
Close everything else out. There's no competing bandwidth, fucking whatevers.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. So, folks, let me know. Are you openly listening to all the stuff? You don't care? Are you wearing really large headphones that I worry will ruin your hearing? What are you doing? Point is, I'm worried. Okay. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll continue talking. And we are back, and we're ready with topic number 2. By the way, I should mention we are taping the show earlier than we normally do. So if there was any political news that happened in the week leading up to this episode, I'm so sorry. We're not going to be covering it, but don't worry. I will keep track of things, and I will cover it, when we return. But in topic number 2, here's the deal. We have been experiencing a troubling phenomenon in state level politics, which is the shift to one party rule. In the 2000s, 3/5 of governments were balanced between the parties, but now in 40 states, one party has the trifecta. That's the governorship, both houses of their state legislature. So in the last 20 years, we have really dug in our heels. Lilah, why do you think this is happening?
Oh, why is it happening? I don't know. I mean,
Do you have any scientific data from your personal life?
I don't have scientific data. I can think about whether it's good or bad. It seems pretty bad.
Seems pretty bad.
Seems pretty bad across the board. I was thinking about this I'm from Massachusetts originally, Boston, and say what you will about Boston. A lot of people don't love Boston, but
I like Boston.
It's all right. It's okay.
I've
But
had
I was
some good
thinking
times.
about Massachusetts and how, like, it might be the best, most functional state because they just like it's of course like it's mostly a progressive liberal state, but it also has had Republican governors. It's had Mitt Romney and Charlie Baker.
Yeah.
Famously, they've done good things like major healthcare reform, which Obamacare was modeled off, was Romney.
Mitt Romney, yeah.
Yes. And both parties just seem to make reasonable laws and check each other and respect each other, and somehow it works. It has good, safe gun laws, good public schools. So I don't know. It feels like that matters.
It definitely matters.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's like, if you have to govern for the masses, then you will do things that help most people. But
Yeah.
when you're governing for a small slice of society, which is currently how we're electing people, like the most extreme parts of each party have essentially hijacked the primaries, which dictates who gets put into the candidate seat, and therefore that person goes forward. Maybe is not even the most popular person in that party, is only the most popular person in the faction of that party that shows up for primaries, which is often not a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense that Massachusetts, or I spent a lot of my life in Maryland, similar, has had Republican and Democratic governors, state legislatures that are a little bit more mixed. They all have to agree on things, but currently the system is set up so that, like, when you have the party controlling all three houses and most of those people are extremists, they're going to only pass laws that favor the people who elected them, which is a tiny slice of society. It's really, really depressing.
Yeah. It is really depressing, and in some of the pieces that I looked at, there was a couple of rationalizations for it. One is this I feel like really tracks probably for all of us here, the nationalization of issues that have been kind of spurred on by the collapse of local media.
Yeah.
So like, local, I think in a lot of situations, local media is like less and less available. And the economics of it feel impossible to keep like a local station going, a local newspaper going, a local this going. And so I think that's a big problem. And then another thing they talked about is the pernicious effect of the antisocial media. So everyone being angry, like social media and all this stuff, sort of gets people more riled up onto one side. And I think that it's interesting because, like, one of the things about the nationalization of politics, whenever I hear like people running for Congress or people running for their state legislature, and then they're asked about like the Gaza conflict, you're sort of like, that has kind of nothing to do with what their job is going to be. And I really think you should be talking about, turn signals and fucking, statewide, climate change stuff that you could be doing, housing and fucking the Department of Ed and all that stuff. That stuff is really, really important. It's so strange to me that we've gotten into this, like, that we care so much about national politics, because local politics just ends up having a ton more impact on your life.
And you just know so much less about it.
Yeah, we know so much less about, I mean, I even feel that for myself, and I'm like one of these people that's like pretty steeped in it. I find myself like navigating toward the national discussion because it's kind of like what everyone's talking about. There's like a sexiness to it.
Yeah.
But nobody but it's less sexy to talk about like the New York City budget and how they're cutting, 2% from parks. You know what I mean? But that's so much more important to my life. It affects me so much.
Affects you on a daily basis, right? We've suddenly, like, the national coverage is outrage politics, basically, right? It's like,
yes,
what are the things that make people maddest, and then like argue them in a way that's most inflaming, so that it makes some group of people feel good about their beliefs and the other group really mad. And like that's basically all it is now. Like I suspect, like we have a debate coming up sometime soon, which I suspect will be very productive, and I'm sure like the important issues will be discussed, and they won't be saying like who got Adderall injected into his ass, and like who fell asleep in what meeting, and like how many rapists were like let through the Joe Biden Memorial Mexico gate yesterday. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It results in us having people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. These are not serious human beings, and they are in Congress. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene is not even the most qualified person at her CrossFit gym.
Can I mention one thing, which is, and again, like I'm just a product of the coverage I see, but one of the things that kind of came across my desk was recently Lauren Boebert's race seems a little like more tenuous than had been suspected. She changed, she's one of these things that actually gives me hope. Lauren Boebert gives me hope. Let me explain.
There's a t-shirt you should sell.
No, let me explain, because and I think I mentioned this on the show before, but she had to change districts because she's been too much. She's been too scandalous, too much in the news, too ridiculous, and her showmanship has basically made it so that she almost lost the last election. She had won it by like 500 and something votes. So she had to change districts to run in a more reliably Republican district. And even in this reliably Republican district, people are not necessarily clear on if she knows anything about the district, right? Like there are people that are like, but like, we're here to talk about, the schools, and we're here to talk about how many hospitals are in this particular county or whatever it is. And she has to prove that she knows any of that stuff. It doesn't matter that she can be a loud, brash, person who really supports Trump. Like, so I think that's something that's hopeful to me, because I'm like, oh, the actual job that they're doing still matters, and it mattered so much that she actually had to switch districts.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope you're right. I mean, like. I feel she may still win, which is also sad.
Yeah, she may still win.
But you're right. She at least got scared to a more driven to a more conservative district that embraces her particular kind of lunacy.
Right. And here's something. So we read a piece in, I think it was in the Post, about how it written by a former Indiana governor. He wrote that the biggest problem with this trifecta is an example that's in Indiana. So he wrote, Indiana held its May primary. 12% of the 4.7 million registered voters voted. The winner got 39% of the vote, which is only 5% of the electorate. And that's it. November's general election is a bit of a joke. That's all from the piece. And I think like that kind of thing happens in New York City, obviously. Like most of our competitive thing is the primary, because generally people vote for Democrats. Although I should say, like Massachusetts, we've had Republican governors, we've had Republican New York City mayors. Hey, Bloomberg, Giuliani, sorry, but he was here too. So there's so there's a little bit more pushback. But I mean, in a state like California or something, where you're getting more serious trifectas, and like like with this example, Indiana, you basically you can have a far right person just vying for 5% of that vote, of the voting population, and then they don't have to do anything for the general. They just get it. And that's wild.
It is wild. On the California side, that piece in the Post reminded me of this opinion piece that was published recently by Nicholas Kristof. However you feel about Nicholas Kristof, but it made an interesting point, which is basically that the blue states on the East Coast are doing well because they have a healthy Republican Party to keep them kind of fighting for pragmatic stuff.
Yeah.
And the blue states on the West Coast, like California and Oregon, are doing worse because they've gone so unchecked that they kind of wander further and further to the left and get stuck in like ideological purity land and don't actually fix the problems that need to be solved, which is like homelessness, like changing, building codes.
It makes a lot of sense. And if you looked at like the deepest red states in the South, I didn't bring my political science here, but I'm just going to guess. Like a lot of the like lowest graduation rates, highest infant mortality, highest numbers of people on social welfare or on the social safety net, which is ironic because they hate socialism, right? And it's the same thing because the people in power are not like Marjorie Taylor Greene couldn't tell you how many schools or how many people are even probably in the Georgia state legislature, but she will tell you that like she passed a law that prevented people from saying gay in her state or something, something absolutely ridiculous.
Beside the point and insulting.
And and useless. Yeah.
Right.
So it's I think that's right. I mean, New York State famously, the legislature was held hostage by a group of Democrats who always voted with the Republican caucus for various reasons, but what it did is it prevented the trifecta here. And I think, it's absolutely right that when you have a party that has to reason with the other party, they're going to find common ground. And when they don't have to reason, they're going to like ban the use of the word gay or like whatever. Like, they're literally going to pass a law that has no impact on anyone except to be hurtful and insulting and, degrading.
Right. So what is the solution here? Is it just that like the opposite party needs to just run candidates that are fucking awesome in the middle? You know what I mean? Like, do we just keep finding Obamas and throw them in Indiana and find whatever Mitt Romneys and throw them in California? Like, what do we need to do?
I mean, we need awesome candidates generally across the board. It would be really nice if we could find a few. I was thinking recently about, that does sound like a difficult solution, but a solution. Like I was thinking recently about about how kids like who are voting for the first time may not remember a time when like the country was really excited about a politician.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels further and further away.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think ranked choice voting is an idea that maybe works because then you have to actually maybe not the most crazy candidate wins. It's the one who got the most votes because people ranked them second or third. That
right. Non-party based ranked choice voting. Yeah.
I feel like it was Maine that does it. I think, and Maine is an iconoclastic place, but it seems to work. And then better candidates certainly. Like, I think. I mean, the problem is, and I'm a Democrat myself, and all of my friends are Democrat. I live in New York City, not surprisingly, but there's also like even a purity test within the Democratic Party too, right? We'd be hypocritical to not talk about it, where it's sort of obviously centrist candidates have a better chance of winning, certainly in borders in swing states and on a national level, but yet there's always a anger from inside the party, which is like, don't support centrists because they're not progressive. It's like, well, we could maybe support the person who might win, or we could support the person who exactly represents your ideals but won't win. And I'm not sure which thing is going to help your life more, right?
Well, and I first of all, I mean, the primary system at the federal level for presidential races makes me insane because, like, I live in a state that never matters. Like, the primary comes and goes, nobody gives two shits. But so we have like no effect on it. But I always thought, like, if there was a primary ranked choice vote all on one day for each party, Nikki Haley would be the nominee. And I'm not saying I look out running out there to vote for Nikki Haley, but she's the kind of candidate that was like, all right, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's fine. Like, that's how I would have felt about it. I don't have to, like, exactly. And she's fucking reasonable. At the end of the day, she doesn't, I don't agree with like a ton of stuff, but like, she's not going to fucking go nuts. Like, that's the difference. And that's I think the kind of thing. And the other interesting thing is, like, we ended up with Eric Adams, who's with ranked choice voting here in New York City, which is like a far more centrist candidate than I think a lot, probably that I voted for, you know what I mean? That I didn't rank him number one. So, but and I'm not saying he's good or bad. It isn't about that. I'm just saying, like, we ended up with someone that's kind of like more centrist than I think, you know.
Negin, how did you feel about ranked choice voting in New York? That
Oh,
experience of ranked choice voting for the mayor.
oh, like was it complicated?
Yeah, like do you feel like it worked? I mean, because I feel like it is the solution that we turn to a lot is like it would be so much better if it were this, but we did it. Yeah.
I think I mean, look, it gave us a consensus candidate.
Mm.
It's like, but it's not the consensus. Again, it wasn't me, right?
Mm.
That was
Right, right,
with
right.
it,
It's not like
but I'm just to be frank, my number one was Catherine Garcia. I'm like a big love her management style kind of guy. You know what I mean? But she
yeah,
was also like pretty. I mean, she was like, she was sort of like the Elizabeth Warren of the bunch, if you
yeah,
will. But I felt like it was a really simple process, and I think it's too early to tell. But I mean, statistically, we got a consensus candidate, and that
that's
makes
true.
me happy because I do think that matters. Like, it is important for most of the people to feel like that their vote was reflected.
Yes.
Yeah, and even if you don't like certain things or like actively dislike certain things, on balance, more positive things are going to happen that benefit the largest group of people than an extremist candidate who's only, as we've said many times, really only going to say pass laws or attempt to do things that please a very small group of people.
Yeah.
Right. They're gonna
Absolutely.
do showmanshipy whatever. It's not like they're not necessarily consensus builders. That's like not ever. That's typically not their thing. So, okay, so I feel like we solved it, you guys. I think we need awesome candidates. So everyone out there, please take notes. And we need ranked choice voting. Let's get into it. You know what I
Beautiful.
mean? Fuck. All right. Let us move on to topic number 3. Okay. I think this is weird, but apparently Expedia releases a yearly report called the Vacation Deprivation Report, which I already just was like, what? Okay. And this year they found that Americans take the least amount of vacation. And this is so sad. But the study found that Americans take 11 days off a year on average, which is depressingly low.
Yes.
And, we talked about versions of this years ago. And I kind of thought the pandemic and the great resignation and all of that would have changed our relationship with vacations. Josh, why are we still so shit at taking vacation?
I wish, yeah. It's like, it's almost one of those things like we've ingrained in ourselves as Americans, like we work hardest and longest. And it's like, but why do we all, this is one thing that I'm not sure why we all buy into. It's sort of like, land of the free. It's like we are the hardest working people who take the least vacation, and people brag about that as if it's a good thing. It's sort of ridiculous. I mean, I read that story. The saddest thing in there was like a pretty large group of people who save all of their vacation to take one big trip, and then they never take the
Don't
trip.
do
It's
it.
so bad. Oh,
That
me
was
too.
one of the findings.
Oh my
God,
God. I was like,
that
this
was
is
so
dark.
sad.
Mhm.
And but then also 65% of the respondents said they feel like they don't take enough time off.
Yeah,
So it's like we both want to brag about how little time we take, but we also feel like we don't take enough time, and
Mhm.
we also plan elaborate vacations that we don't do.
and then
We think about elaborate
and
vacations we don't do.
make fun of Europeans for taking August off. And it's like, wait, isn't that kind of awesome?
That's
It's pretty awesome.
so
It is
awesome.
pretty awesome.
By
Yeah.
the way, according to the survey, Americans said they're just too busy and planning a vacation can be overwhelming. Now, I wonder from the two of you, Lilah, do
Mhm.
you feel like the planning part has ever been a hindrance for you in actually
Uh,
taking the vacation?
well, I just don't plan until the very last minute, and then I take great vacations. I think everyone needs to relax a little bit. I do think when I lived in London for a few years, and they just don't worry about a lot of the things Americans do. They don't worry that they'll fall behind. They don't worry they'll burden their coworkers. There seems to be a little bit of a martyr complex in it.
Interesting.
With Americans. Anyway, so I decided to look this up, like what is the minimum annual leave in different countries around the world, just to like
Okay.
get a sense of why,
Oh, I love
like
having
what's embedded
journalists
in
on the
us.
show.
Here
Okay,
we
yeah.
go. And okay, Norway was 25 days. Greece and Italy and the UK are 20 days minimum annual leave of vacation. United Arab Emirates, the UAE was 30 days.
Oh, shit.
Can you guess America's? number of days?
Two weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
3
It
weeks?
was 0.
What?
What?
There's no like federal or state
Oh,
Oh,
minimum
right. We
paid
federal.
don't. No,
vacation
yeah, we don't have that. That's right.
or
That's
paid
right.
paid public holidays in the US, which I guess I knew in my head, but I didn't realize that the only other countries that have 0 are the tiny islands around Micronesia in the Western Pacific who like live in paradise.
What's the story there? Oh, because they're
I
just
know.
on vacation all the time.
I guess that's
Like,
the assumption.
it's-
But really, that'll like train you to think that you don't deserve rest. I think to just know that it's not legal to be
Yeah,
paid.
fuck. So, like you mentioned, Josh, this is according to the survey, half of Americans not using PTO they don't use their PTO despite getting the fewest amount of vacation days globally. So this is like getting vacation days from employers, not
From
federally.
employers, yeah.
19% said they save up, like you mentioned. That was 19% said they save up on a big trip, but that don't end up going.
So
France
sad.
won the top spot for the country that gets the most days off, which is about a month. Although UAE also has about a month. Is that right?
That's based on
the
that's
federal
different. Yeah,
law,
that's federal.
right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are just like average days off.
And that includes
and-
holidays.
Yeah. So all of that is really sad. I think part of it is too, and I wonder how all of this is going to shift when we sort of, if one of our calculations is how many people are freelance, because the part of the problem, like for someone like me who is freelance, is like, well, I mean, I can fucking take every day off if I want, but I will not earn any money. So
Right.
as a result, I take almost no days off. You know what I mean? So like there's as the gig economy rears its head and becomes more of a thing that people are doing, that's gonna, I mean, can it be any worse? But it can be worse, I think.
That's very true. I mean, I was a freelancer for 20 years before this company, and yeah, that's how you feel, because when you aren't working, you're not getting paid, and the more days you're not working, the more days you're not getting paid, and then that's a very hard hamster wheel to get off, and I'm not sure what the solution for that is. Like telling freelancers to take more vacation. It's easy for them, but also very hard, right?
Because I'm sure those days off don't feel like vacation.
Right, because
No.
you're stressing about like, oh wait, like when I get back, I had to find more work, and I spent this much money today, and I didn't earn anything, and
Wait, I want to come back to this thing, Lilah, you mentioned about living in London. By the way, I lived in London myself for a little while. I was a fucking waitress and some other things, a barista,
Oh my
whatever.
God, cool.
And so I was young and an idiot, but but I want to get back to this thing you said, which is like they don't seem to worry about like burdening their colleagues or the pileup. What do you mean? What do you mean?
I mean, the sense is like, I just was really, I was admiring in the way that they like, it hit 5 or 6 p.m. and they just left. They were like, bye, good to see you, and left. And we have, at the FT, we have 30 days of paid vacation, which is a lot. And every 4 years, we have a paid sabbatical for 30 days, not to like be the promoter of my, but it's a European publication. It's a British publication. And it's like, it's so
Mind-blowing.
different, so
Yeah.
shockingly different from. So if that means that because we have so many days off, maybe we're less productive because of it, but because we have so many days off, we have to have systems in place for when people take it. That I think a lot of American companies just don't put those systems into place because they're assuming you'll be there for the vast majority of the year. I don't know. It seems to work better because then you leave and you're like, all right, I have backup. I can.
I will say, as a waitress in London,
that didn't feel
they
that
didn't
way,
give two shits about me.
Yeah, of course.
And there was no tips, and the fucking wage was so fucking low.
Yeah.
Because there was no minimum wage in the UK when I was working there. It was a disaster. Anyways, but I think so. Just so we're clear, every Western country has the ability to be an asshole.
And to totally take advantage of its workers. Yep,
Yes,
everywhere.
yes. Well, one of the things we saw, just real quick, it was a list of the friendliest places for travel. Now, they showed us the top 10. So there was like, they did a kind of like survey of like who is the most friendly in countries that you've been to. And rounding out the top 5 were number 5, Sweden, number 4, Mexico, number 3, Croatia, number 2, Greece, and number 1, South Africa. Were you surprised by this list of the friendliest places to travel?
Can I take a moment to disagree with the list just a
Yeah.
little bit?
Okay.
My dad is from Greece. I have like a lot of family there, and I go there almost every year. And although they are good people,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I would call them friendly. I just want to like prepare any travel goers that like if you walk into a restaurant or a store or a place that does a service and you say, "Can I pay you to provide this service? Like, can I rent a car from you?" Their initial instinct is like, "Ugh."
It's totally.
And they're like, "We don't have cars." You know, it like takes a minute, and then they go to start to provide you the
To
service.
do the
And
job.
as
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
providing you the service begrudgingly, they start to say, "Where are you from?" "Oh, you're from New York." "Oh, I have some cousins in Astoria." Like, "Oh, like Sex in the City." Like, "Oh, your father's from Greece." "Oh, we love you." And then suddenly by the end of
Right.
it, you are a part of their family. You have somehow like accrued a Greek accent. You know, I ended up doing
Right.
shots of liquor at a butcher shop in Athens once. They are ultimately,
As one does.
very warm and friendly. But
That
I would stick with it past the first reaction in Greece. I thought it was really
that
funny
feels
they
like
were number two.
I feel like that experience is pretty common in Europe in general,
Yeah,
right? Like
Southern
in
Europe,
Italy
probably.
is like that too, where it's like wonderfully colorful and friendly people who you want to hang out with, but if you go into a store, they're just like, "What are you doing here?" And you're like, "Well,
Yeah,
I'm trying to
yeah,
buy
yeah.
things that in theory you are selling, and I assume this is how you pay for your mortgage." But I know, sorry, I mean, I don't
I'm
really want
so
to.
sorry. I know you're suddenly apologizing.
I don't
I know.
mean to.
It's so that's and if listeners know that I fucking love me some France. Like
Hmm.
I love France. I lived in Paris. I talk about it all the time. And one of the things that is funny about France, it's similar, right? Similarly, like anytime you walk into a store, it's just like the person who's working there is just like, oh God, it's definitely like that. But also, one of the worst things about France, again, love France so much, is when you go to buy clothes, there's three sizes. It's 1, 2, and 3. And they look at you and you pick something up and they go, no.
Oh,
They just tell you that's not going to work for you. Or they'll
maybe
just,
great things, actually,
it's
but
like,
like
they're
not nice.
I mean, and in the beginning, I was just like, this is so brutal. Like, I would just come home and cry because a salesperson was just like, that's going to be ugly on you. That doesn't work for you at all. You know what I mean? And like, I was like, I can't handle it. But like, now I'm just used to it. Like, I don't take it personally.
Right.
They don't even mean it personally. They're just sort of like, that's what they think and they tell you. But
And
they
it's
don't wish
helpful.
they don't want you to die. They just like, they just don't think that skirt works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shocking no one, France was not on the list of the friendliest countries in
France was not on
the
the
world.
list.
Nor the
Okay,
United
I
States.
want to take
Nor the
issue.
United States.
True. But although everyone says when I travel, everyone says Americans are very friendly.
It's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. Mhm.
Also, I want to share a really like heartwarming story now that we're in the run up to the election, which is that I work, I volunteer a lot in Tompkins Square Park. Listeners know this about me in the East Village of New York City. I'm one of the founding members of the Friends of Tompkins Square Park. So we do a bunch of gardening, We raise money for the park, etc. And there is a refugee from Guinea who keeps coming Saturday mornings, keeps showing up. Mamadou, he's a really lovely guy. And we're always like, oh, this is weird. We don't want a refugee to like volunteer for this thing. We can't pay him. But he was a gardener in Guinea and he loves doing it. So this is like an outlet for him while he waits for his papers. He has another month or something until he gets his papers. So he's very excited. And I was speaking to him and I was like, so, tell me about your experience. And, he's like, oh, I have to, I'm living in a shelter and I'm doing this and that. And it's like, and it's great. Like, I feel very lucky. I have a place to sleep, whatever. And I was like, well, what do you think of Americans? And he's like, I got to be honest, I love Americans. They've been nothing but helpful and open and caring. And I've had nothing but really great experiences with Americans. And I just started I mean, I really like had to like stop from weeping. I was so moved. And I just thought like, thank you. Like, because we have such a negative feeling about ourselves right now. And sometimes you need your kind of de Tocquevilles to come in and be like, no, it's you guys are not all shit. You know?
I will also say my British friends and colleagues, when they come, they're like, God, no one would ever talk to each other in a bar if they didn't know each other. And you guys in America, you just talk to each other. How in God's name do you, how could you bear talking to each other? It's so great. Like, you all love our accents and you think we're so cute. And anyway,
it's our politics. It's what we were talking about earlier. So our politics have driven us to like hate each other publicly, like because we like two sides that vilify the other, and we're always angry at each other publicly. And in all of like reality TV, everyone's fighting all the time, but that's, none of that is the real world, right? It's sort of like, I remember that after Trump was elected and the immigration ban was put in place, and then the Times went to this town in Iowa, I think, where it was like a very conservative town, and they're like, we're very much in favor of this ban, except for the immigrants who are here because we love them. And like they have all these, and we like they run the restaurants and they clean our houses and they're so nice, but like all the other ones are terrible. And the point is just like, we're trained by we work in the media, so I guess in some way indirectly guilty for that. Like we train people to feel a way that they don't actually feel. It's even like when I drive around, I have a place upstate, and we drive around upstate, and I see the obnoxious Trump signs, and I'm like, oh, these people, I hate these people. And then I like meet them at the farmer's market, or it's and like I don't know who they are, and I'm like, these are the nicest people. I love these people. And then I see one of them driving a truck, and I'm like, oh God, it's that guy. Oh, like what am I doing? Like why am I judging people? They actually probably are quite nice. And I think this is how we see each other versus how we actually are. Is like strip away all of the insignias of how we feel about politics or social issues.
Exactly. It's like what we were talking about with one party rule. One of the reasons that has happened is because the media is really trying to hammer home this point that everyone hates each other, but they actually don't. That has been, something that I've, that's been my chorus for a very long time.
Yeah. And the nationalization of politics, it really is. Like on a local level, it's so different. It's so different.
So different. Folks, okay. That is the end of the show. What a wonderful conversation. I loved having you guys on. And what I would love is for the people of Fake the Nation to be able to find all of the wonderful things that you do. Lilah, where do they find you?
Sure. So I host the Financial Times' arts and culture podcast, Life and Art. So you can search Life and Art wherever you listen to podcasts. We talk about, we bring on critics in pop music, food, books, history, film, art, and that sort of thing to make sense of culture. Negin, you were on once. It was a total delight. And so you can also find me on Instagram at Lilah Rap.
Josh, where do they find you?
Well, my latest show, White Devil, which is a 12-part narrative limited series about a very bizarre story that starts in Belize and sort of takes me around the world. You can find it by searching White Devil in your favorite podcast app, or my company, Campside Media, which makes a lot of narrative limited series, all of which I'm proud of. We are campsidemedia.com. And on all the socials, I am at Josh Dean 66 because at one point Yahoo randomly assigned me that email, and it's forever stuck with me.
I can't wait to get to sink my teeth into White Devil because I am like in the market for a juicy pod to keep me going through some travel. So so excited for that, folks. You know where to find me and all the things that I do. As this episode airs, I will be, I think, in let me see, I don't know, I will probably be maybe on my way to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Anyways, you can still see me in the Great American Punchline, I think, as this episode is released. So go to bit.ly/Great American Punchline to get tickets. We'll be hopefully in a city near you, like Memphis or Muncie or Milwaukee. So check that out. Otherwise, I want to thank everyone who makes the show a possibility. That's our wonderful producer, Andrew McGuire. Thanks to everyone at Headgum. Thanks to Gaby Alter for our theme music. If you have any thoughts, ideas, questions, concerns, you can email us at fakethenationpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to write a review on Apple or on Spotify, because it really does help people find the show. That's like one of those algorithm thingies. And again, don't forget to go to patreon.com/Negin Farsad to help support the show. Thank you so much to everybody who does that, and thank you so much to everybody who listens. You're all just wonderful. May you take more than 11 vacation days. We will be back in your earballs next week.
That was a Headgum podcast.